Hi everyone, Leanne here from Jada Blossom, and I have a fun Easter card to share with you today. Hey, so I'm using Jada Blossom's Bunny Trail stamp set, their Easter Tweetings stamp set and the outline dies, their candy grid die, their scallop square dies, their medical embellishment cluster, their gnome dies chick add-ons, their gnome dies extra parts 2, and the Gnome Friends penguin dies, just the 2 little beaks. And I'm using the odds and ends from Bunny Hop along with the 6-inch pad and Candy Stripe and Sprinkles from Doodlebug. So first I'm going to stamp a sentiment that says Easter Tweetings onto some paper tray ink white cardstock with VersaFine Clear Nocturne ink, using a Misty, of course. And then I'll put that off to the side to dry. Now I have an A2 sized square card, so 8.5 by 4 1/4, scored at 4 1/4 inches, so it'll fit in an A2 sized card. And I'm adding a 1-inch strip of pattern paper from that Doodlebug Bunny Hop 6-inch pad to the bottom of the inside, about 1/4 inch from the bottom. Now I'm using some odds and ends from that Bunny Hop set from Doodlebug. I'm going to add those to the inside of my card just for a little bit of decoration, right? So I'm using my Barely Art glue and reverse tweezers. All my die cutting today was done with my Anna Griffin Empress machine, working on a Stampin' Up! Pad. All the things I always do. Now I try to echo what's going on the outside of my card on the inside. So I'm putting a little chick here on the inside because there's going to be chicks on the outside. Now you can see in my upper left-hand corner, you can see another version of this card that I'm making, but with blue chicks. So I'm going to make one with yellow chicks. So you saw that I dotted the eyes with a Sakura black glaze pen, and now I'm using a Sakura pen, Sakura Jelly Roll pen in a number 10 to add some highlights to these images. I just think it adds a little something. There we go, and isn't that cute? And I'm going to stamp on the inside using that Bunny Trail stamp set, just the Happy Easter. So I'll stamp that to the inside. So that's the inside of my card done. There it is. Now I'm going to put together my main image. So first I cut this out of Candy Stripe and Sprinkles. And this is Jada Blossom's Candy Grid die. So I cut it out of blue. Then I'm layering it on a white layer of paper tray ink white cardstock just to make it a little bit thicker. There we are. And I'm going to cut out that Easter Tweetings sentiment with the outline die. Just making sure it's all in the right place, adding some Post-it tape to keep it in place. There it is. Whoops. Now I've got my sentiment for the front of my card. And I did cut it a couple more times out of that same paper tray ink white cardstock just to make it a little bit thicker. So you don't need to use any dimensionals or anything like that for this. I'm just, popping it up with cardstock. There, and it gives it a little bit more, I don't know, it just looks thicker on a card front, which is fun. So I am going to add this candy grid to my card with some Barely Art glue, or not to my card, to this scalloped square that I cut out of paper from that Bunny Hop 6-inch pad from Doodlebug. So I'm just going to line this up. Just trying to get it as straight as I can. And I do weight it down. Now I'm going to add a Stampin' Up! Dimensional to the center of each of one of these little holes. So what I did is I made 2 of these cards. I cut the candy stripe the candy grid die. I cut it out of this blue cardstock, and then I cut it out of a yellow cardstock. So I cut it out twice. So I'm going to have 2 cards made with this in this design, basically. So I'll have blue chicks and then yellow chicks. So whatever the grid is cut out of, I use the opposite color for the little chicks, and I'll show you how I make those. So I'm adding on some paper to my card base. So this is cut 1/8 of an inch smaller, so it's 4 1/8. And the paper's from that bunny hop from Doodlebug. Now I'm going to add on my little scalloped square to the center, or as good as I can. I have a hard time lining things up these days. So just trying to get it straight, like I said. Now I'm going to add my sentiment with some Barely Art glue using my reverse tweezers, just trying to center it on that scalloped square. So this is a pretty easy card, and I do weight it down. Okay, so now I am going to add in my chicks. So my chicks were cut out of that candy stripe and sprinkles. So I cut one of the grids out of yellow and one of the grids out of that kind of that swimming pool blue. And you'll notice that I did use, I believe, the 12-inch for that, for the blue one, because the dots are a little bit bigger. And the yellow, I use the normal candy stripe and sprinkles, 6-inch. So I just popped up all of these little things. Now I did cut the legs out of orange zest cardstock from Paper Tray Ink, and I'm going to add some legs to my card front, so because I'm turning these into little chicks. So I'm just going to glue these little legs, and I'll slip them underneath each of these 3 bottom chicks. And there it is. And I'll add my last one. So I found this was pretty easy to do. There was some multiple die cutting involved, but other than that, pretty simple. So I'm just going to add on all of these little feet. Now next, what I'm going to do is I'm adding on, these are from Jada Blossom's Medical Embellishment Clusters, and they're supposed to represent little viruses, but I cut them out of the matching cardstock. And I'm giving them, it's going to be like a little tuft of feathers on each chick's head, right? Remember, you don't have to use things, the way they're meant to be used, right? Now I'm going to add a little bow to the center of each of these little chicks, little feather tuft on their head. These bows are from the Jaded Blossom Gnome Dies Extra Parts add-ons. And it just allowed me to cut a bunch of bows out of Doodlebug Candy Stripe and Sprinkles in kind of this dark pink. I'm using my embellishment wand to pick each one up. Just an easier way to do it. So I did cut all the beaks out of orange zest cardstock from Paper Tray Ink. And I did mention that I used the Gnome Friends penguin dies for their beaks as well. And that way, I used the Gnome Dies Chick add-ons for the beaks, and then I used the Gnome Friends Penguin dies for the beaks, just so I had multiple beaks. So now you'll see that I cut the little legs in half so I can add legs to the other little chicks. Now, not every one, I'm doing every second one, right? So I'm doing the 2 outside chicks on the top row. There, and then I'm going to do the middle chick on the middle row. And then I will leave the other 2 without, or the other 3 without legs. At least legs that are showing, right? So there. So now I'm going to add on all the beaks. And like I said, I used the beaks from the Gnome Dies Chick add-ons and the Gnome Friends Penguin dies. All the little beaks, just to allow me to cut more at once, right? So I'm adding, kind of mixing them up so they all kind of have little different beaks, and adding one to the center of each of these little chicks that I'm making. It's relatively a simple card, just a lot of die cutting, but, a lot of these I was able to just run through, a couple of times. So there, just making sure they're all kind of centered as well as I can. Now I'm using these shape sprinkles from Doodlebug. They're called an eye for an eye. Really, they're just little black enamel dots. And I'm going to add 2 to each chick using a pen blade to pick them up. Just find it helps to keep my hands out of the way. So I'm just adding on all of these little eyes. And it's pretty simple, and you've got cute little chicks, right? And these are using Jada Blossom's Candy Grid die, right? So it's kind of fun adding all of these on. There it is. And I hoard these, so I have a lot of them. And there we go. Isn't that cute? Oh, and then that's the inside of the card. So I'm going to add a few of these shape sprinkles. These are called tiny hearts. And I'm just going to add a few of these little yellow hearts, sort of in between these chicks. Just like so, getting them lined up. And I'm going to add 2 beside the sentiment. And they kind of blend into the background because it's just another color that's been used multiple times on this card layout. And then this is the blue version. So thank you so much for stopping by. Be sure to hop on over to the Jada Blossom blog, be inspired by the team, the Jada Blossom store, to get your hands on these amazing products. And thanks as always for watching my videos. I really appreciate it. Make sure to come back and watch another soon. Bye, everybody.